You can find actual articles online by the Smithsonian. They've thrown giant bones into the Atlantic Ocean. The reason why natives would come up to you, indigenous peoples of America, and they would raise their hand to see if you had 6 fingers. Because if you had 6 fingers, you were probably a descendant of or directly related to one of these giants. And they found in Chief Joseph, in his pocket, a Sumerian tablet from Mesopotamia. How in the world did he get a Sumerian tablet from Iraq in his freaking pocket?
It's either some kind of psychic teleportation or advanced technology. I know there's at least one more advanced civilizations on the planet. Why are these stories not well known?
There's an agenda to keep control over the population.
Who runs the agenda?
You're listening to The Human Upgrade with Dave Asprey.
I'm a biohacker and a longevity guy, have been for 25 years. And I'm also very heavily into consciousness, meditation. I've run a program called 40 Years of Zen for more than 10 years, teaching the highest levels of meditation with neurofeedback. And I've traveled around the world to meet gurus and to train in monasteries and jungles and places. So there's a big piece of science, Western science, mitochondrial biology, neuroscience, BDNF. But what's powering this is I know that anytime you enter on the path of biohacking, you might be like me, brain fog, overweight, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you're sick, you can't stop farting, whatever your thing is. You're going to come in and ultimately you're going to say, I want to live longer and I want to be happier. Because you don't want to live longer if you're not happier. And happiness is a form of nourishment like anything else. And so biohacking is about all the tools to give you control of your state. That includes your physical state, your mental state, your emotional state, and your spiritual state. And these are what drive me. When I started this blog, 14, 15 years ago, my goal was 5 people not go through all the suffering that I went through with my health and all that. And what I care about now is helping you have the tools to become more conscious and more energetic, more present, more peaceful, and more powerful. And today's episode, we're going to talk about all of those things. This is recorded live here at the studios in Austin, Texas. And our guests are Billy and Elisabeth Carson. And we're going to talk about using trauma to boost your success. And we're going to talk about some esoteric things like manifestation. And we're going to talk about conscious relationships. And as you know, if you've been listening for a while, I've really spent a lot of time studying different relationships, working with different relationship experts. And I believe that that third F word, mitochondria care about fear, food, fertility, friends, and forgiveness in order. That fertility piece, the intimate relationships in your life, there's an algorithm, there's rules, there's skills, just like there are for marketing or for learning how to eat or how to exercise. And just no one teaches that stuff. So we're going to talk about that today. We'll talk about science versus mindset versus consciousness. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We'll go deep. We'll probably go off the charted path, which is the most fun that I think we can have. I approach all of life with curiosity. A lot of things that I think I know that I'm wrong about. A lot of things that I do know that someone else might be wrong about. And who knows, maybe we're both right, depending on what lens we're wearing. So I invite you to listen to this episode with an open, curious mind. There's some cool value here. Elisabeth Carson is a best-selling author and COO of Forbidden Knowledge. She talks about all kinds of stuff, real estate, entertainment, culinary arts, and runs Biohack Your Best Life, which is a show about biohacking, you might guess. And Billy Carson, 4 times best-selling author and co-founder of Forbidden Knowledge. And he wrote The Compendium of the Emerald Tablets, and woke doesn't mean broke, and a bunch of other stuff. We got consciousness, we got biohacking, we got trauma, we got awareness, and we got esoteric mysteries of the universe like the Emerald Tablets. And yes, I know what those are. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Great to be here.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
I want to just go straight in on this stuff. Trauma is a word that I used to react to real poorly. I'm like, what do you mean trauma? I'm not like a whiner. This would have been me when I was 30.
Yeah.
I didn't experience trauma. I still have both arms, both legs. It wasn't that hard. I walked it off. And I understand now that trauma sets patterns in my nervous system that I probably don't know about. And it makes me react in ways that I don't want. So I've gone through huge amounts of trauma resolution. Mm-hmm. You have a different take on trauma. Tell me about using trauma for your benefit?
Yeah. So I've used trauma to basically expand my life and learn to be a better person, really. And I would lean on biohacking to do so. So, I mean, nobody can go through life unscathed of trauma. Even going through the birth canal, you're getting some sort of trauma. Even if you have some sort of something in utero that happens to you, that can affect how you act in life.
I can't believe you said that. You went straight to pre and perinatal trauma.
Oh, yeah.
It's so esoteric. And that was one of my formative experiences from my PTSD. Like, did you know that?
No.
Dude, all right, we're going to go deep on this stuff. All right, tell me more.
Yes. Okay. So, I mean, I relate because I was adopted. And so I know that there's so much trauma that relates to that. Yes. Massive abandonment issues, which I didn't even discover until probably about 10 years ago when I was like, oh, I'm really messed up and I don't know why. And I don't know why I have these abandonment issues.
How old were you then?
I was 28.
Wow. So you were early on. Okay.
Yes.
Not a lot of people in their 20s become aware of that. Usually it takes another 5-6 years. So
yes,
head of the curve.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I found brain training when I was 19 years old.
There you go.
And so I had some sort of contrast, which led me down this path of trying to find ways to feel better because of my trauma. I was just reaching for everything external to heal my pain, which was not necessarily great. Partying, drugs, alcohol, just anything I could distract myself from because I was feeling so horrible inside. And so luckily I did find biohacking, and I used my trauma as a strength and as an example for other people because I've been through probably everything that you could think of negative that could happen to a woman has happened to me. But yet I've overcame those things and I've built a pretty good life for myself. So I use the trauma that I've experienced to talk about it and share with people to let them know that you can have hope, that you can get over these things, you can feel better, and you can get out of stress.
Now, how I use trauma in the same way, excuse me, without realizing it, was I came from a very rough upbringing, but beneath the ghetto, you could say. I mean, we were taking baths in the backyard using the water hose connected to someone else's house because we didn't have running water, no electricity, sleeping on the floor to prevent from getting shot in the bed at night. Dang. Because the baseboard added extra protection. If the bullet went down there, you might not get hit. And just a really rough up, eating Cairo syrup and toast every day and walking around with holes in my shoes and so forth. And I remember one day, I just said to myself, there's got to be a way, at least just to get something from the ice cream truck. We can't even afford an ice cream truck. I just wanted to get the Bazooka bubble gum. And I ended up coming up with a decision to sell my toys. And I went door to door selling my toys, asking for donations, a penny, a nickel, a dollar, whatever. I made about $13 with that. But long story short, that showed me that I have the power to change my reality. And that excelled me in so many areas of my life, even to this current day. The trauma of being completely impoverished and poor, abject poverty, and struggling and suffering, it just propelled me where I didn't take the victim mindset as to woe is me, they're holding me back, and I can't get this, and we're poor, and this is my life, and I accept this. That's PTSD mindset. I took the PTG mindset, as Dr. Amen told me. He said post-traumatic growth mindset.
Yeah.
And so that's how I use trauma to excel. Now, there are some side effects to that.
Oh, yeah.
Because because you're striving and you're thriving, and anytime anything comes up trauma-related, you dive straight into work. I dive straight into work and ideas and concepts and building and building and building. So you become obsessive in that area because it soothed you early on. But that's how I use trauma to strive and thrive. But later on now, at this current stage of my life, through Elisabeth's work, I'm realizing how to go back now and deal with that trauma because you can't let that sit in there and fester. At the age of 53 now, I'm really just finding the trauma links from before and seeing now from new eyes how I utilize that trauma to excel. So it helped me and propelled me in one direction, but on the other side, there's still a lot of triggers and things that I have to work through with that trauma.
I've had a lot of entrepreneurs who come through 40 years of Zen, which is a trauma resolution thing amongst a high performance thing. And I remember my friend Craig, he says, it's a 1,200 person company. He says, I just realized that all my success comes from being bullied in 7th grade. Right.
Yeah.
And I would say I had a lot of that in my early years too. I didn't have that level of poverty.
Yeah.
I've had a knife pulled on me more than once. I've been in probably 100 fights in school.
Yeah.
and got bullied pretty heavily.
That's significant.
And it's helpful that I was the biggest guy and the fattest guy, because I just look at the bullies and be like, I'm going to sit on you. Right. So never threw a first punch, always threw the last punch. And maybe a little bit of anger was in there. And I worked through that. And we talk about the birth trauma.
Yeah.
First time I ever did any personal development thing, this is before I started the biohacking movement. I went to this bizarre 10-day thing called the Star Foundation. And the founder of this was the woman who created the American Pre- and Perinatal Psychology Association. I didn't know anything about this stuff. And a friend said, Dave, you got to go. And I said, well, why? And she said, I'm not going to tell you what they do because then you wouldn't go, but just trust me. And I'm this hardcore kind of rational and really angry. And I recognized my anger. I didn't understand that there was anxiety underneath it. So I show up at this place, and this lady with like these glowing blue eyes from Dune, she looks at me and she goes, tell me about your birth. And I'm like, hospitals, vaginas? Like, I'm kind of like weirded out. And she goes, do you have any details? And I said, well, yeah, the cord was wrapped around my neck. And I didn't lose oxygen, so it was no big deal. And she goes, I thought so. And she shows me like a printed out PowerPoint slide. And it's like a strength, weakness, opportunity, threat. Like it was like if you take a moth and pin it down to a board, it's like, this woman just called my numbers. Like, how did you know?
Wow.
And she says, it's science. She said, what happens in the womb and during birth affects personality. And we have 30 years of data on this. And I actually started crying. And computer science guys don't really cry from Silicon Valley. And I felt like she hit me in the gut. And I'm like, why didn't someone tell me? Like all this suffering for 30 years. And the fact you just throw that out there, and I'm like, good for you. Because for me, I had PTSD from my birth experience, and I did the healing for it. And I couldn't have done things I do in the world if I was still carrying that weight with me. How did you heal from birth trauma?
Well, to be honest, I'm still healing from it. I feel like life is an everlasting heal journey. But I mean, I did a lot of work surrounding adoption. And one time I was sitting with my a practitioner. She was specialized in craniosacral. And she was doing craniosacral somato-emotional release work on me. And I remember she put her hands on my stomach. And when she put her hands on my stomach, it was like I shot back into my mother's womb. And I was there, and I could feel everything deeply. Like, I mean, throughout my life, I've had a lot of trauma, so I was very disassociated. So I didn't feel emotion for a very long time. So this was prior to me really feeling emotion. And so when I went back into my mother's womb, it was like, bam, and it hit me. I'm like, oh my God, I was swimming around in stress, depression, anger, and just all of these negative feelings. And I could just feel how stressed my mother was and how awful and scared she was. And then it hit me, and I'm like, okay, well, I feel these abandonment reasons for a reason. This is why, because my first introduction to consciousness is rejection. And then I did some more work around my adoption, and I actually re-experienced my birth. And so I felt the emotions coming out of the canal, and I remember feeling the emotion of I just wanted the woman that was carrying me to look at me and embrace me. That's all I wanted. And I didn't get that. I never looked at her, never saw her. Doctors took me away. And then back then, they didn't really understand how important it is to your physical contact, to love on a newborn. So I don't feel that I got much of that at the beginning of my life. So that really impacted me, but it helped me to understand myself better. That this is the reason why I have these abandonment issues, that this is the reason why I'm like this. So it connected something for me. And then it also made me realize how deep things that happen in the birth, in the womb, and those first few moments of life. It's so important because we don't have any shells over us. We have not built any layers of protection. So when you get emotionally attacked, it hits you straight in the soul. So it becomes your core wound. That becomes so deep rooted in you. It really spawns who you are. So, yeah, I mean, I continue to do work around that. And I want to be a person that really talks to adoptees, because I was so confused that I had these abandonment issues for so long. It didn't make any sense to me. And I know that a lot of adoptees as well experience the same types of issues that I have. So that's been a pretty big goal of mine. And that's what I'm writing my next book on, is adoption.
How do you respond to people who say you can't actually remember your birth?
I just tell them, that's okay. I mean, believe what you want to believe. In my vessel and in my spirit, I believe what I believe. And because my perception is so, then it's reality to me. So I really just kind of brush those things off, and I don't really too much let...
It's like a new age way of telling them they're wrong.
Yeah. I guess so.
A very gentle letdown.
Yeah. I mean,
she does
your
it
perception
well, too.
is your perception.
Right.
Yeah.
Mine is mine. So,
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of credibility, and I want to share something. I don't think I've ever shared this on the show because we're going there. I would have said, there's no way in hell you can remember your birth. No one remembers their birth. That's dumb. So at this same event, Barbara, who's since passed, I think she'd be 100 now. She said, I want to do the regression part of this with you. So I don't even know what that is, but okay. So she asked me to just do some breathing, no hypnosis, no nothing like that. And like I kind of snapped back into my body. And I remembered all the time in the womb. And the memories, and I think you'll resonate with this, the memories of being in the womb, it's all feelings and emotions. There isn't much thinking because your prefrontal cortex isn't really there. So it's all just like body somatic sensation and like very big swings of like fear and connectedness and all the different things. And I kind of set aside some of what I saw. And years later, I found a book somewhere that described the sensation of the development of a zygote, of a fetus. And I was, oh my God, this guy, it's like it was in my head when I was experiencing that. And then I remembered my birth. And I remember some things. And I called my parents and said, hey, did this happen? And they said, oh yeah. And here was my experience. Okay, so I was posterior, which is different than being breech. It means like you're flipped backwards, but not going to die coming out. And I had the cord around my neck, and they were flipping around and probably tongs, whatever. And if you're listening to this going, Dave, what are you talking about this? Just stick with me for a minute here. So then I was delivered, never lost oxygen, all that kind of stuff. And I remembered just being in this like clear, transparent box with a bright light. And that was what I asked my parents about. And they said, oh yeah, it was a warming chamber. So as soon as you were born, they took you and put you in this warming chamber in another room under a light to warm you up instead of putting on your mom. And I remember like in my bones, the decision I made. I came out and was like, I don't know what's going on here, but I'm all alone. And then I said, I still get like tingles in the back of my neck. I said, if I'm going to be alone, then I'll be alone. And I was alone for 30 years of my life.
Wow.
Until I healed it.
Wow.
Right. And people think it doesn't matter how children are born. Your mitochondrial networks, your unconscious parts, they're deciding what the world is like so they can set you up to win and at least to not die. And all that abandonment trauma, all the stuff that I had about being alone, it wasn't a decision, right? It was decided by the environment around us. And that's why my first book was on fertility and including, conscious childbirth. And it's why I caught both my kids at home and they don't feel like they're alone and they didn't get the abandonment. They didn't get all that stuff. Are you familiar with Stan Grof's work on birth?
No.
So Stan Grof is the father of transpersonal psychology, where a lot of the stuff that we've all worked on comes from. He's about 100 now. He was 94 when I did a breath workshop with him. He invented holotropic breathing.
Wow.
And he invented it because he used LSD with 3,000 patients in Czechoslovakia in the 1950s when it was Czechoslovakia. And when it became illegal, he figured out this breath work that would make people, I think the technical term is trip balls. So, and that was part of this process I went through when I was 30. And what he came up with is that there's 5 stages of birth. And when you get stuck at any one of the 5 stages, there's behaviors in your personality and your emotions and your triggers that you'll continue repeating until you heal it. So what I want to know is, how did you heal, or at least what was your process of entering healing? Because you said you're still working on it.
Yes. So I've actually done probably over 80, 90 holistic modalities. I mean, I've tried everything. I've been following you for over a decade. So, I mean, I've really tried everything. Flotation therapy,
Thank you.
magnetic therapy.
True.
Yes, I mean, we have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber at home. We have a infrared sauna. We have a lymphatic suit. So, I mean, really, for me, it was a matter of understanding that I always felt like I had a gaping hole in my gut. And I was trying to fill it up with everything external, like alcohol and friends. But really, I realized that that was my own self-love. So I needed to find love within myself again. And I was searching externally for everything instead of looking internally. So as soon as I shifted focus inside and internal, then everything changed for me. And I realized that I'm not my thoughts. I can control my thoughts. I am the observer of my thoughts. That was the moment I woke up. It was like everything changed for me because I was stuck in a negative spin, thinking that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, attracting these bad relationships, bad friendships, bad instances. So as soon as I really realized that I had the power to create my own thought process, that's when things really shifted for me.
That is, it's so profound. You understand the thoughts. And for me, the first tool, and when I brought into the world of biohacking very early on, was heart rate variability training. Not the wake up and look at your ring score. That's relevant. But it's how do I consciously in real time change my heart rate variability? Do you do that?
Yes. We have heart math. So I have the little thing that clips on your ear.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And through meditation and breath work. Yeah.
Beautiful. So Roland McCready, who is the head of science at the Heart Math Foundation, has been on the show a couple of times. We've been friends for, I think, up 20 years now.
Oh, great. Yeah. We talked to him on the phone about a year ago.
Oh, you did? Cool.
Yeah.
And I was an advisor to Heart Math in 2008.
Oh, wow.
I started doing training in 2004 when Roland came and spoke at the longevity nonprofit that I used to run in my 20s. And it just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God, hundreds of times a day, my body is going into fight or flight without my knowledge or permission. I'm like, this is a load of bullshit.
Yeah.
Right. And I did the training for a while. And then all of a sudden, I realized I don't need to have the clip thing on my ear. I can just feel when it happens.
Yeah.
And when you do the training with their little app, there's a skill, a thing that makes the light turn green. And for me, it feels like something in my heart. And I could just do that. And so I spent maybe 3 years in my late 20s, early 30s playing whack-a-mole with my nervous system. It would get triggered for God knows what reason. I'm like, all right, chill. And eventually, it's pretty chill the vast majority of the time. And if it's not, there's a reason, and it's not a trauma reason. It's a physiological reason.
Yes.
If you had to sort of pick a thing from a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is no healed, 10 is I've got this. Where are you?
I would say 10 because I always got it.
Nice.
I always have it. But I do feel like there's next levels and more levels of awareness I can reach, more levels of optimization I can reach. And I do have triggers. I observe those triggers right now. I don't really let my emotions take control of me like I used to. I stay aware in those moments, which is to me the best thing that you can do in life.
It's so easy on me.
Yes.
It's fun. That was my next question was like, how does this affect your relationship?
Yeah. I mean, well, I think that for us, I love where we're at because he's a mirror to my triggers and I'm a mirror to his triggers. And we definitely got together for a reason. And I think that reason is to heal each other. Because he didn't know what trauma was before, we got together.
I didn't.
And my whole life is about trauma. And that is the only missing piece I feel that can excel him sky high. And so we definitely met for a reason. We've been working deeply on Billy's trauma, and Billy's been so helpful in being so patient with me and my triggers and the stuff that I go through, and then being willing to do all this weird biohacking stuff. And,
I used to think it was weird in the beginning, but now I've accepted it as part of my lifestyle.
It really works. I wouldn't waste my time on it.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to know a little more relationship stuff. All right. So when Elisabeth gets triggered, what do you do?
Well, the first thing I do is I observe the energy of the frequency swing. And I realized, okay, the energy is, she doesn't have to say anything. I could just sense the energy has now shifted. And the first thing I do, I want to go check on her, just see if she's okay. If there's anything that she needs, maybe it's something that had nothing to do with me. In the beginning, I used to think, maybe it's me.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you go to, oh, it's got to be me. And then you begin to realize through us counseling and talking and learning each other that sometimes it has nothing to do with me. And for me, just to be there, just to be supportive, just to sometimes listen, and just to maybe sometimes ask questions, or sometimes maybe to see if she just needs a little bit of space. And it takes a lot of patience and control to get to that, and maturity to get to that point. In the beginning, I wasn't there in the beginning of our relationship, but I really feel so pleased now that over time now, maybe 4 years, I've really matured to the point where if she's triggered about something, I don't have to go crazy. I don't have to get nervous. I don't have to figure out what's going on. I can check on her. I can show her I support her. I can show her I love her. I can embrace her. I can see if she needs space or if it's something I can assist with. And I don't try to solve every single problem, because I don't have to solve every problem. Sometimes she just needs an ear or somebody just to be there and sit quietly. Whatever the case may be, I'm there for that and I'm open to it. And that patience and that love and that empathy, it helps bring us closer together.
Wow. You ever think about having like one of those like water spray bottles so you can just spray it like
like we do with the dog?
So
Keep the dog off the couch.
I'd get so triggered if you sprayed me. I'd be so angry. Like, what are you doing?
I recommend not doing that, just for the record.
I won't do it.
It might actually be funny though.
We've really built a very special relationship. This is the greatest relationship I've ever been in. For me, starting over in my 50s is a big decision.
Dude, you're in your 50s?
53.
He's aging backwards.
Dude, this melanin thing isn't. It's like your skin doesn't age. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you look like you're 30.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Well,
He's
I got
been
to look
reverse
30
aging.
because she's 30
Well,
something.
literally, he's been reverse aging.
Yeah.
When I first met him, he didn't look like that.
No, I didn't.
No.
Oh, that's another conversation we can have. I was a vegan.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And
That'll make you so
30
sick.
years.
Oh, me too, man.
I was getting so sick. I was dying. I was literally dying.
Yeah.
And she literally nursed me back to health. And, switched my diet up, got me back eating proteins, got me back in the balance. It took me to get my blood panels on a consistent basis, to get my saliva, stool, and blood checked, to help customize a diet and nutrition plan specifically for my body type, for my blood, for everything about me, customized, and really nursed me back to life. And I went back, I was 175 pounds, which is not good for 6'4". I looked like a stick man, and getting autoimmune responses. My teeth were dark because I was malnourished. I had leaky gut. I had borderline osteoporosis. I was internal bleeding. I was at Gaia TV filming a TV show, and I stood up after 4 hours of filming in the chair, and the chair was wet. And I go, why is the chair wet? And when I did I had on black suit. When I did like this to the chair, my fingers were red. I said, wait a minute, what is that? Oh, I'm leaking. I'm bleeding. I was bleeding out while I was on this TV series I was filming on Gaia.
Bad, yeah.
And I was just like, I thought I was dying. And it got real bad. It got real bad, man. I was so inflamed in the joints. I couldn't do one push-up. I was in bad shape. So I had to get nursed all the way back to now, 215 pounds. I'm solid. I'm exercising on a consistent basis. She's giving me all the supplements and nutrients I need to take on a daily basis, all the peptides I need to take, all the biohacking tools.
Good job.
She saved my life,
you, biohacking.
literally. Yeah. And my biological age dropped down to...
I think you're like 40 or something.
Yeah, I think it's 40, yeah.
Like 15,
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
And there's a couple of things going on there. And one of these is like one of the biggest... just injustices that I've ever come across. And you got osteoporosis because it's hard to make vitamin D when you have dark skin.
Yes.
All right. And there are tens of thousands of Black fathers in prison right now because their babies didn't have enough vitamin D. And so they get rickets.
Yeah.
And then their bones break. And they go to the hospital. For your mom and dad, go to the hospital with the baby, say, he's in pain. I don't know what it is. And they do x-rays and say, well, there's broken bones. Which one of you is beating the child?
Yep.
And they call CPS. Yeah. And then it comes down to, well, we know the child has been beaten because of the broken bones. It's just a nutrient deficiency because you need more sunlight. You need more vitamin D. And then it comes down to this. well, if one of you won't confess, then we'll take the baby from both of you. So the dads do what dads do. And they say, fine, it was me. And they go to jail. And they didn't do it. And Dr. Cannell from the Vitamin D Research Institute has testified hundreds and hundreds of times to help men get out of prison or not go to prison. We're just dealing with nutrient deficiencies and sunlight deficiencies. And it's like it's so wrong to separate a family like that. It just gets under my skin. It pisses me off.
It's so sad. Another gentleman he fortunately got released from jail. They had locked him up because the baby died in his arms while he was sitting on the couch watching TV. Turns out it was just actual suffocation, just the way he was holding the baby. Just a real accident.
Yeah, that can happen.
But when they did the autopsy, they claimed that the baby had anal penetration and all these other things. But come to find out, after another study was done later, after he was already locked up for quite some time, they discovered that the crack in the anus was just from constipation. It was a tiny little crack, just a tiny, tiny bit, and it had nothing to do with any kind of anal penetration whatsoever. It was just constipation. And the other thing was something not to do with, wasn't choked to death, just suffocated in his arms. So they proved it through some scientific way and got him out. But this is just one person to get out of probably, who knows, thousands that are down there that just can't get out.
And I have lots of people from all over the world that listen to the show. And it doesn't matter where you're from. If your skin is dark, your vitamin D level of your intake has to be higher, right? And if you live in a northern environment, like, if your family's from Africa or India and you move to Canada, where I'm a dual citizen there, there's just not enough sunlight even for white people up there, right? And if you're not taking vitamin D, which is dirt cheap, and you should take it with vitamin K2 and vitamin A and vitamindake.com, guys. But if you're not doing that, you run all kinds of metabolic risks,
big time,
and especially for babies. Like we gotta get this fixed. Going back to the childbirth stuff, I think babies should be really healthy, right? Okay, let's swap sides here. Now, when Billy gets triggered, how do you handle it, Elisabeth?
How do I handle it? Well, you know what, he doesn't really too much. Billy's so even keel for the most part.
Seems pretty chill. For all times
for the most part, he's very even keel.
It's a lot.
When he goes there, though, it's usually because I'm triggered. So, I'll try to de-escalate the situation by speaking softly, which doesn't really work because I guess my my triggered de-escalation voice is triggering for you.
Yeah.
So really,
Why are you whispering?
So good.
Right.
Now you need the spray bottle.
No, we just be squirting each other with water. No, I try to just really show him that I understand what is happening with him. And then, if it's not with us, that I'm there for him and that I got him, and just reassurance and just pouring love into you, because
that's a fact.
His parents never did that. They never showed him love. They never hugged him, kissed him, showed up for his games. Just never, he's alone a lot of the time. So I just want to kind of be that foundation to let him know I'm there. Like, I'm there for you. And I will always be there for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, babe.
Yeah.
How do you guys choose your friendships?
Phew.
It's been tough.
Yeah, well, Billy loves everybody.
I know. That's my problem.
He has such a big heart and just accepts and loves everybody. I'm not exactly the same. I can kind of feel, I'm very empathetic, and I can feel people very deeply. So when we first met, I saw a bunch of, people around him that were using him.
Yeah.
And so I called them all out. I'm like, this one, and that one over there. Not for you. Not for you. He's like, no, they're awesome. I was like, okay, well, some people just got to learn their own lessons sometimes.
So let me learn a few lessons.
Yeah, let them learn the lessons.
I got burned a few times. Yeah.
But now we just, especially now, because of this recent situation that we've been going through, unfortunately, we were betrayed by, a couple of our inner circle people. And so now it's just, we just really stay focused on the mission, and we are very careful with who we let in. Very, very careful. our circle is a dot.
Yeah.
And I kind of like it that way. And I don't mind it to be that way, just as far as our inner circle. But, we are social. So we do like to go places and do things, but we don't have to call everybody a friend.
Right.
What I've seen from working with 2,000 entrepreneurs at 40 Years of Zen, a lot of this I write about and heavily meditated, my new book, is that the two traumas that are hardest to forgive are ones that business people get a lot, and it's betrayal and injustice. I run a conference for biohacking entrepreneurs called The Business of Biohacking. It's businessofbiohacking.com. And once a year I get together and I teach them, here's how I built a $140 million a year company. And here's the skills you don't have probably. Like, let me transfer them. And I asked people at this last one, raise your hand if people have stolen money from your company. And man, me too, multiple times. Man. And probably 90% of the room, but it's one of those things that people don't talk about. And that's betrayal. And that leaves a mark. And if you're sitting in a place of not being able to trust anyone, then you're alone. Yeah. You don't want to be alone, especially if you've been adopted. Alone, being alone is painful, but trusting is painful, and you get in this trap. And those are one of the reasons I shared the reset process is you got to let that stuff go and realize that person took money because of whatever their parents did to them and that whole path.
Right.
And so one thing you learn is you learn discernment.
Yes.
Which is how do you pick people? And what I'm seeing in you guys that's pretty cool. One response to trauma is you become highly empathetic. Have you come across this kind of research?
Yes.
Right. So what that means is you have a gift of empathy, right? And women always have a gift of intuition. Like it's built into mitochondrial density in women. And this is why in a great partnership, she's going to see the people you don't see.
Yes.
And I have that same thing. I always like to see the best in people, even if, they're absolutely using me or, I had a guy who I got his business up and running entirely. Violated every line of the contract. And when we said, hey, man, you can't do that, he's like, that's your fault. And great. And now going out and competing and things like that. And I've gone through a lot of that betrayal and things like that. And end of the day, you just got to let it go.
Yeah.
But if I'd have listened to the women in my life who were highly intuitive, they would have told me. So the way I have things set up now is I have a group of women who are my soul friends, and I can call them up, and they have intuition off the charts, and I double check with them. I have some employees who are intuitive. My girlfriend's intuitive, and so I'm pretty damn intuitive myself because of the lessons of being punched in the face in business a few times. But I don't trust myself fully.
Yeah.
I trust myself and I verify with others. And it sounds like you guys have this going on between you as well.
For sure.
Oh, yeah. That's what we're doing now for sure. It kind of reminds me of the movie Dune, where they have the Jesuit women that consult with the kings and the rulers. Yeah. They always consult with them to find out what insight do you have on the situation? Yeah.
What do the witches have to say?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
I love that. The Kisatz Haderach.
Yeah.
Fear is the mind killer. It's a great movie, great book.
I know.
Let's talk about the neuroscience of manifestation. How do you guys see manifestation?
Oh, yeah. That's powerful stuff. A lot of people think manifestation is just some woo-woo thing that, I just want to manifest something, so it must be magic, woo-woo. But there's a lot of science behind it. And I had a lot of ideas and concepts and theories on the power of manifestation based on neuroscience on my own, just through my own research. And then I took a class at MIT. This is prior to the pandemic situation. So at that time, you had to go in person for this class. It wasn't an online course. And I got so much out of that because I've taken online classes before, but the in-person class is totally different.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know Dr. Tara Swart. She's a best-selling author. She's written a lot of big podcasts.
The Source Code or The Source she wrote?
The Source is
I don't
her
think
book.
I've had her on, but I will now.
Oh, yeah. I'll connect you.
Thank you.
She's amazing. She was my professor for that class. And in that class, she started talking about neuroscience and its connection to manifestation. And it was like the biggest confirmation for me that all these years, everything I have been thinking of, everything I have been understanding for myself was actually true based on real science. And she's an actual PhD neuroscientist. And this was like mind-blowing to me. And realizing that when you think about something and you activate the different hemispheres of the brain, left and right hemisphere, you can create a hyper-focused thought that then goes out into the universe. And then the universe gets that signal, gets that message. And then it says, okay, we got the message. But now there's another part to it. You have to take action. So now that you sent that conscious thought out into the universe, the second part is you must take action. And when you take action, then the result is the manifestation. That's actually the shirt I have on today. CT multiplied by A equals M. Conscious thought multiplied by action equals manifestation.
Nice.
And when you look at the ancient civilizations and the Hermetic principles, as above, so below, all is mind is the first principle, by the way. And then you realize in neuroscience how important the mind is and how the mind actually connects to up to 11 dimensions. That everything we have in the mind is a multi-dimensional thought. Your mind is thinking on multiple dimensions because consciousness is not created in the brain. It downloads consciousness. And since it's connected to these higher dimensions, everything you're doing on that original platform is higher dimensional thinking. And the proof of this, I learned, is how do we manifest anything into reality? Let's take a look at this microphone, for example. A person thought about having a microphone that could be a podcast mic that can broadcast a person's voice through a digital medium. And they thought about the shape, the look, the size, the color, and everything else on the multidimensional platform. They then collapsed that multidimensional concept into 2D by drawing it on a piece of paper or putting it into a CAD, a computer-assisted design, where they can maneuver it and see it from 3D illusory, but really in 2D. They then print out a blueprint for this and give it to an engineer who then creates it in a 3-dimensional structure that you can move around on the XYZ axis. You're now looking and touching something that came from somebody's conscious thoughts. So we're powerful beings. Everything that exists in the 3rd dimension is being manifested from conscious thought, broken down into 2D, and then brought back into a 3D object in the construct of this matrix that we're living in. And we think that things are just here because man made them. No, these are the thoughts. Everything that you see in this room is a conscious thought at one point in the past, now manifested into solid reality. So you can now begin to apply that to everything in your life. It doesn't have to be solid objects. It can be happiness. It can be peace. It can be joy. It can be a new house. It could be a new car. It could be finance, a powerful, strong business, whatever it is. But those concepts on how this was created work in everything, different aspect of life.
I love that. The neuroscience behind manifestation is a thing, and I've been doing a lot of work on neuroscience and mystical states, and a lot of the 40 years of Zen stuff is people are in very altered states, and when you're in one set of altered states, you can go in and you can actually reprogram your mitochondrial trauma detection networks. And when you're in a different state, you can go out and you can manifest things. And there's Joe Dispenza's work.
Yeah.
He'll be at the Biohacking Conference, and you guys will be there too. And this is in May. It's biohackingconference.com. 4,000 people expected. And
Wow.
Joe talks about there's a field you can connect to for manifestation. And I've always wondered, what is the actual organ of manifestation? And I've gone into quantum physics about this. And so I want to run this past you because I know you've written a lot about, Hermetic principles and, some very old stuff.
Yeah.
So here's the model. And I want you to shoot holes in it or tell me where it lines up and where it doesn't. All right. Your conscious brain, in my understanding, can't actually manifest because it's on a time lag to reality because our thoughts are too slow. So the frontline quantum-based sensors of reality are mitochondria. And they're the first things, they're ancient bacteria, and they are a network of distributed consciousness in the body. So they're the things that are sensing reality first, which means they're the things that collapse probabilities. So they're potentials into particles, waves versus particles, the quantum slit and Schrodinger's cat and all that kind of stuff, right? So that means that if you can change your brain, change your state, so that you can tune your mitochondrial network of sensors so that they are collapsing reality the way you want it to be, that you can manifest. But that if you think about it in your mind, but you can't enter the state to communicate your mind to your body so the networks in the body can do their thing, it's hard to do it. And that trauma gets in the way of that because you think, I'm going to manifest this, and the body's like, it's not safe. And then nothing collapses. All right, shoot holes in that or amplify it, or what do you got?
I love that, actually. It's beautiful. The scientific study was done where they took 2 individuals and they put them in different rooms. They put a screen in front of them, put an EEG cap on, connected to a computer, and they started showing images on the screen. flowers, a rose bed, a woman nursing a baby, somebody getting shot, war scenes, people dying in war. They did these 10 seconds apart. And every single time in the computer, all of a sudden, after a few slides, the body, the mind was sending to the computer what the next slide was going to be. In some way, the body had picked up on the information and detected what the next scene was going to be, whether it was peaceful or traumatic, and transmitted it to the computer up to 7 seconds in advance.
So you think the body was telling the computer what to do, or the body was predicting what the computer was going to show and then creating a fear response?
I believe that reality is happening in a delayed response.
Okay.
That the information had appeared on the screen up to 7 seconds prior, and the body, maybe like you talk about, maybe this mitochondrial network of sensory perception system had picked up on it, sent it to the brain, and the brain shot it to the computer.
Interesting.
Yeah,
what,
it's quite possible.
I'm familiar with a study, it may be a different one, where they would show, happy pictures versus scary pictures. And they were measuring something called galvanic skin response, which is one of the biohacking feedback mechanisms that you can train your body on. And they were looking at EEG. And before an image would appear, and the researchers don't know what image because it's randomly generated, which is why you could say, well, the body was affecting the random number generator. And we know they can do that because Roland from HeartMath has shown that consciousness of 8 people or more can affect random number generators. So it could be that, or it could be that the random number generator worked by itself, but the body knew before the mind did which image would come up. So you get the stress response before the image. And this is proof at least of intuition.
Yeah.
It's just most people are disconnected from the intuition that's in their tissues. They don't know how to read it. What advice do you guys have for learning how to tap into the intuition that's built into your meat?
Shadow work. I do the shadow work. It's the trauma that gets in the way, the stress in the body. Manifesting it, I feel personally, it takes the full vessel. So not only thought, but it takes the body too. You have to be in alignment and congruent with what you're trying to manifest. You said it earlier. If your mind wants this, but your body's like, no, I'm so scared, then you're not going to manifest that. So how do you align the body and the mind? Well, trauma work, doing shadow work, biohacking, getting rid of those stressful, all of that stress within the system. I mean, energetic, physical stress. It's all there until you look at it and work through it through shadow work. So I would say shadow work.
Yeah, you're right. Because as she described to me when I first met her, if the body is full all the way up to here with trauma, there's no room for anything else. Manifesting, creativity, relationships, just nothing because you're already up here.
You're just reacting.
So through the method of doing the shadow work and the trauma, you're nothing but an acting reaction. It's bringing down that trauma. And it's almost like the glass is being poured out, which is giving your body more room to work. It's taking the focus off of the trauma, the pain, the agony, the depression, the issues, and it's freeing you up to be who you truly are.
Present. It frees you up to be present in the present moment, which is the only moment that's real. So
it is the only moment that's real is the present. And there's plenty of physicists who will show you that time is just an illusion.
Yeah.
And it's an illusion that our body makes so that we can process reality, but that it's not real, even though it sure does look real. That's a tough one.
Yeah. From a higher dimension, the past, present, and future happen at the same time. So yeah, it's a construct developed by humans for the purpose of navigating this matrix.
Right. When you talk about shadow work, give me like 5 examples of shadow work.
Craniosacral somatoemotional release work. Going there is very scary. I would call that shadow work. You're shedding light where there has been darkness. I would say meditation, breath work, and flotation. I put that all in one category because you really try to shift in that meditative state where you can actually go in and reprogram your subconscious, which is amazing. Grounding, I would definitely say grounding.
As part of shadow work.
Absolutely.
versus biohacking. Okay.
Absolutely, because we got disconnected from ourselves. We got disconnected from Mother Earth, and that has created this false identity of who we are. When really we just need to mirror nature because nature is perfect. So I feel like grounding and getting out in nature and connecting to Mother Earth is definitely shadow work. Definitely, because you're becoming so present. You're aligning with the beauty that's out there, which is presence. So definitely grounding. What else? Shadow work. I would say EFT is great.
This is tapping or emotional freedom technique.
Yes.
Dear listeners, we've
Yes.
had Dawson Church on and Nick Ortner on over the years talking about tapping. So.
Yes, tapping has been very significant in my life and for many people. So I know that you can kind of work into your subconscious through tapping. So I've done a lot of that to try to rework some of my emotionally charged traumatic memories, and I've had much success doing so. And then I would also say EMDR is a really great method to work through your trauma.
It's one of the more powerful tools.
Yes.
I've definitely recommended it so many times, especially when you know what the trauma is.
Mm-hmm.
But man, EFT and tapping, it pisses me off.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, you want to sit here and be like, even though you're tapping?
I don't really do it like that. I mean,
Make the,
When she does
sound.
it, it's kind of sexy. I like
no,
to watch.
I mean, nude tapping is different. No.
I mean, I don't really, you know.
Flushing your... So it is how you tap. Now we get it.
He likes it when I tap.
I like to tap.
When you decide to have a drink of alcohol, check out ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic. If you want to feel good the next day and stay sharp, this hack is for you. ZBiotics is a bioengineered probiotic that helps you feel like yourself even if you had a couple drinks the night before. Here's how it works. Alcohol creates a byproduct in your gut called acetaldehyde, and that makes you feel off the next day. It also makes you old. ZBiotics breaks down that byproduct so you wake up refreshed and ready to go. Just make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. It's a tiny little shot that tastes like water, and you stay hydrated and you enjoy yourself knowing that you're going to wake up feeling a lot more like yourself. This time of year is packed with lots of social activities, and people sometimes have a few drinks. Stay ahead by stocking up on ZBiotics now. I always have ZBiotics if I'm going to have a drink. So go to zbiotics.com/Dave and get 15% off your first order. Plus, they have a 100% money-back guarantee, so there's no risk. Armra colostrum is a must-have. This isn't just another supplement. It is colostrum, which is upgraded to boost your immune system and your gut health. Armra is great because it comes from first milking colostrum, which means it has more than 200 functional nutrients. That includes immunoglobulins, growth factors, and peptides that specifically protect your gut lining. You can expect cellular defense and energy on a new level. Since I've added Armra to my stack, I've definitely seen faster recovery, especially during travel, better immune resilience, and more mental clarity. Clinical studies show that colostrum reduces gut inflammation and supports muscle mass. And it turns out I have both of those, but my gut inflammation is far better than it used to be. This is nature's original superfood. It's potent, it's clean, and I think you want to try it. Head to tryarmra.com and use code Dave. They'll give you 15% off.
The reason it kind of pisses me off is I don't like it that tapping works. It'd be so much easier if I could just think a thought and it would just happen.
Right.
And I just look at that as mechanical vibration is one of the most primordial senses there is. And there is an intelligent distributed network in there, and tapping on the right spots, it actually works. And it works in clinical studies.
Yeah.
And the fact that some part of me, my ego, thinks, well, it shouldn't work because it's just too dumb. Like, why do I have to do this? But I have had results from tapping, and I didn't in the first few times I did. I'm like, that doesn't work. But when you know where you're tapping and what you're tapping on, it does work. So when we're talking about shadow work, I look at this biohacking framework of what does the body pay attention to if the mind isn't present? And the first thing is fear. If something is scary, you should run away or hide. And all of the practices of shadow work that you've talked about there reduce the fear response, right? So the less energy that goes into fear, the more can go into hunger or food, fear, food. And then the third F word that keeps all life forms alive over multiple generations. You guys know that one?
Fertility.
Yeah.
Well, the other one.
I didn't want to say the
You
other.
heard me at the conference. Damn it.
The other one.
You didn't fall for my trap. I got to tap on this one. Even though it didn't work. So fear, food, fertility, right? And so you do the shadow work, you do the trauma resolution stuff, and suddenly you have more peace, which is nourishing and less fear. right? And then you do the nutrition work and you have more nourishment and less hunger, right? And then you do the relationship work and then you have like a sacred relationship and intimacy that nourishes you, right? And then you have the next F word is friend, and you have the community thing. That's why you build a community. That's why we do the biohacking conference. And it's so important to do that. But if your community is full of corn syrup people, we talked about discernment earlier, right? You need a clean community of people who actually want you to succeed instead of people who are jealous of you and pretend like they want you to succeed even though it pisses them off.
Yes.
Right? Big deal. And this is why that, intuition and discernment happens. And then if you do all those right and you have enough mitochondria working, because maybe you stop being a vegan like you and I both did, you got enough left over for forgiveness or evolution, to take yourself to the next level. And so it's like more energy, better allocated equals you're a master biohacker.
Yes.
Right? You look at each of those F words that you could do. We haven't talked much about that third F word. And I've studied this for many years. I've written, books on or not whole books, but chapters in books on semen retention. I've had experts in Tantra, various conscious relationship practices and stuff on the show over the years. Heck, I've had a couple of professional dominatrixes on talking about like spiritual and healing from those kind of practices. Yeah. And so I'm willing to be very curious about this. But you've written and you talk a lot about the emerald tablets, which are tied to the Isis sex temples way back in Egypt. What are the emerald tablets and what does this have to do with relationships?
Yeah, well, the emerald tablets is an ancient writing that goes back tens of thousands of years. There's an emerald tablet of Hermes, which is Thoth, the Atlantean priest king. That's located in Cambridge. And there's also the emerald tablets, just one of dozens of authored tablets that this gentleman named Thoth from ancient Kemet, before it was called Egypt, had wrote. He also ruled over the land of ancient Egypt pre-Dynastic for 14,000 years, according to the ancient Egyptians.
This one guy?
One guy.
14,000 years old?
Yeah. That's just the time he ruled.
Wow, a little bit of longevity going on there.
A little longevity going on. And so when you read the tablets, he actually says he's gone into these rejuvenation chambers. So he biohacks.
Oh, yeah.
He says 100 times 10.
Mm-hmm.
He said 100 times 10 have I descended the dark way that led to light in the halls of Amenti, and 100 times have I ascended. So he's talking about just there alone 10,000 years of rejuvenating his body. So they're
Do you have any of those chambers at home?
Well, we know where they are. It's located in Egypt. We take people every year on tour to see what I call Enki's, his father's halls of Amenti, underground, in an underground area at the Serapeum located in Saqqara.
Wow.
And we showed them these megalithic 1,000-ton diorite radioactive boxes that are in these alcoves or these coves and these halls that nobody can figure out how in the hell they got them in there. And these things are so powerful and incredible. They're energetic and they're still radioactive. It's a power bank that nothing has ever been discovered inside of any of them. They're pristine, clean, and perfect on the inside. And nobody can figure out how in the hell they got them down there. They had to be teleported or manifested there.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're really incredible. And so this gentleman, he claims to be a son of Atlantis in this text. And this text had gone through the hands of many incredible people over the years. The Queen of Sheba, Philip of Tripoli, Roger Bacon, Michael Doreal or Maurice Doreal, depending on the translation, Isaac Newton.
Yeah, the Natural Philosopher Society had access
St. Thomas
to this
Aquinas.
stuff.
Yeah, so they all had written translations of the Emerald Tablets, and it also inspired them to write other works of art as well. And these tablets are inspiring because not only do they cover technology, I mean, real tech.
It's about tech.
Yes, real tech. Quantum physics, quantum mechanics, clearly in there, and then an incredible level of spirituality, really asking man to see the power that's within him and understand that he's part of God and God is part of him, and to seek the light and become the light, and to achieve and ascend to a golden age. That's the ultimate mission in the tablets.
Definitely a biohacker.
Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. And with relationships, what I see is the relationships that these people were able to foster through these ancient texts and tablets ended up being lifelong, huge relationships. When Thoth met his wife, Maat, he built the Teotihuacan complex in her honor, which the Pyramid of the Moon is eight pyramids stacked on top of each other. He's really obsessed with the letter 8, the infinity 8. But through this relationship and through her teachings, he was able to, you can see where he imparted wisdom to her, and she also imparted wisdom to him. It was a relationship where both people brought something to the table, not where it was just one-sided. And her most incredible work are the 42 Laws of Mayat. The 42 Laws of Mayat are this incredible writing, which I read them out loud on Instagram before. They go viral every time I read them.
Wow.
It's like reading the 10 Commandments, but before the 10 Commandments. Matter of fact, the 10 Commandments, I believe, personally, my opinion, were probably inspired by the 42 Laws of Mayat.
So they use ChatGPT, ran the laws of Mayat through and says summarize in 10. Got it.
Right. Downloaded the tablet from the cloud. But this writing is incredible. These these affirmations, these 42 incredible, powerful affirmations written, and these guidelines for how to live life and how to be in these 42 Laws of Mayat, just the most incredible thing you can read. And when you read it out loud, it begins to resonate through your body.
Wow.
And whoever you're reading it to, when you get them to follow in and read it with you, like repeat after me, and they repeat after you, it becomes like this powerful resonance. It's really incredible. And it's designed really, I think, to bring people together, especially in relationships.
That's pretty incredible. What other ancient historical technologies are fascinating to you?
Well, the technology really that fascinates me the most is this building technique that they've used at a lot of these ancient sites and temples. Every year we take hundreds of people on tour. Not hundreds at one time. We've taken at the most 101 at one time, I believe. Mm-hmm. But over the years, it's now been hundreds adding up. We take them to all these incredible ancient sites, and we give them these super VIP visits where to access places that nobody's ever seen or haven't seen in decades, right? Yep. We unlock doors, we open shafts, we get into hidden crypts that have never been opened, and we take them to see this incredible stuff. And every time I see these things, it's still mind-blowing that the stones used to build the majority of these ancient sites, including the Great Pyramid, for example, the Great Pyramid, 2 million blocks of stone, 2 million individually cut, created for the specific location pieces of a puzzle,
right,
locked together. It's an interlocking system. It's
incredible.
Not a Lego block set. So you can't just say, oh, I got these Lego blocks. I made these perfect cuts, all the same size, all the same shape. I'm going to stack. Oh, we got a pyramid, which is what they try to show you in mainstream concepts.
No.
Not exactly. There's no two stones alike. Every stone is created specifically for the location that it's sitting in. And then when you see the shafts and you go inside these areas and you see how the shafts were cut through solid stone, perfect angles.
With airflow.
With no variance, zero variance, with perfect airflow. You go
just copper chisels. That's how they.
Yeah, copper chisels
and chicken bones. Don't forget chicken bones.
Oh wow, that's a good idea.
Chicken bones and copper chisels is what they say. But you begin to realize something more advanced is at work here. We're talking about a high level of sophistication. And just within the Great Pyramid alone, you realize that it's located at the center of the landmass on Earth. Not the center of Earth, but the center of landmass.
Wow.
So if you said, Billy, I'd like to hire your services. Please discover for me the center of landmass on Earth because I want to build something there. I would have to say, okay, can you give me access to a satellite and put it into a polar orbit so that I can scan the Earth as it spins on its axis and grab swaths of data and get topography information so that I can calculate the exact center of land mass. And that's where X marks the spot. Also, one of the oldest maps is the Perry-Reese map. The Perry-Reese map was discovered, I forget what year it was discovered now, but it's a really old map that covers the landmass of Antarctica before it had ice.
Right.
Okay. Now, it's taken or drawn when you open it up. It's drawn from a perspective of being high up in the sky, looking down over Cairo.
Wow.
Yeah. You can only get that perspective unless you're there. So who, what, where, when, why? This is just incredible mysteries that just keep us hooked on going to these places and trying to really discover how. They must have had satellite technology. They must have had orbiting technology or flying technology. When we took people to the temple of Seti I in Abydos, incredible, massive, megalithic temple. When you walk in, about maybe 60 meters up, there's an old stone beam there. And in that beam, you see a helicopter, a tank, a fighter jet. And people, oh, that's been debunked. That's just an accident because they try to recarve it. Well, how come it appears in there several times, number one? Number two, it's supposed to be the changing of the cartouche to the new king's name. But in those times, when you go in and you change the cartouche to the new king's name, you better not mess it up. If you mess it up, off with your head.
Right.
And if you did mess it up and your head is off, somebody's going to come in to fix this because this is a desecration to my temple now. I own this temple now. It's in my name. How come all the other ones were changed over perfectly to his son's name, except for those?
Wow.
It tells us that, and the Egyptologists that we hire, homegrown, we only deal with homegrown Egyptologists, they all say the same thing. It's never been touched. That's just a mainstream myth.
Wow.
Never been touched. And that the ancient Egyptians did have access to a high level of technology that we're just beginning to rediscover today, or try to rediscover. So we see all the drill holes, right?
Yes. What about Turkey? So we just took people to Turkey recently.
You go to Göbekli Tepe?
Göbekli Tepe.
I just took my son there.
Nice.
In October.
Oh, beautiful.
It was amazing. Yeah, it's an amazing
It's pretty
place.
incredible. Talk about that. I think a lot of listeners, unless Graham Hancock was on maybe 8 years ago.
Oh, nice.
I read one of his books 25 years ago. Oh, yeah. This is probably our third advanced technology because all the stories we all heard in school don't even make sense for old tech. So the narrative is dumb.
Yeah.
And I don't know that you or I know all the details. I know there's at least one and maybe two and maybe more advanced civilizations on the planet before us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So Göbekli, what is it?
Well, hold on. I just have to say, there's proof there that there was technology back in the day. It's proof for me. I was like, okay, hands down, because they drew sperm. So how do you know what sperm looks like if you don't have a microscope or some sort of technology to see what sperm is? So it did it for me.
Yeah, they etched sperm into some of the stone.
Yeah.
It's not the only place in the world that we've seen that. Also, there's a place in India that has a sperm entering into the ovum. So we understand now that somebody had microscopes because you can't just look at this fluid and say, oh, there's an egg and a sperm. And how do you even know that it goes into the other?
Right.
I got to push back on that a little bit. Here's why.
Okay.
The assumption that you have to have a microscope to do that is an untested assumption.
That's true.
And we talked about remembering your time in the womb. Did you not remember the moment of conception? So I did. And
that's the interesting perspective.
Wow.
Yeah.
Think about that.
What makes you think that you can't see the shape of the landmass if you just know how to do remote viewing? You guys know how to do remote viewing.
Yeah.
Right. And I've talked with various groups over the years who've said, well, let's just train a couple hundred people on remote viewing. Don't let them talk to each other. And let's have them all go remote view.
Yeah.
And then they'll compare notes. And the stuff they all agree on is pretty darn accurate. And another friend, I'm not going to say her name, she just got outed in a book about remote viewing. She was the most successful remote viewer for one of the 3-letter agencies.
Wow.
And the way she told me this in person over dinner, so I know it's as real as it gets.
Yeah.
The way she got, and I'll post her name if she's cool with it, but the way she got connected into this is she learned how to do remote viewing on her own. And she learned how to teach it. So she emailed the head trainer at the 3-letter agency, you can guess which one, who was doing remote viewing, and said, hey, I'd like to compare notes on training protocols. And then her phone rings and he's like, you have training protocols? And so they tested her and she scored better than anyone on the planet. So
wow.
I know there are some people who know how to leave their bodies. I've learned this stuff in my late 20s.
Oh, it's no doubt.
I'm not the world's best remote viewer, but you can leave your body and move your consciousness around. So you could have they were just sitting there meditating and they did. And shamans would tell you they could.
It's very possible, yeah.
And then and I'm not arguing that you're wrong. I'm just like different
Another perspective. I love it.
And I learned this ancient Chinese method of healing or interfering with another person's energy field. And this is one of the first kind of esoteric things I did. I was like, this sounds like a bunch of BS, but I'll give it a try. The kind of, skeptical but not cynical, but maybe there's something there. And this guy's saying, well, my family's been teaching this technique for 28 generations, and I'm just going to put it out there. And he says, sometimes if you're working on healing someone's energy and it's just not working, just look at them and say your tail is safe. And I'm like, why does that work?
Yeah.
And he goes, he just smiled. He goes, it just works. And the reason it works is that when a sperm and an egg come together, the egg has a consciousness and the sperm has a consciousness. How do I know this? Because bacteria have consciousness. Individual cells have conscious. It's not that smart, but it is conscious. And if you're doing a really powerful regression, different people who do it will experience either the perspective of the sperm meeting the egg or the egg meeting the sperm. And
Wow.
And I know on different medicine ceremonies, I've traveled inside my body. I've looked inside my bones. And shamans, some of their pictures mirror cell biology. You see these pictures. So I'm not saying that we didn't have microscopes and telescopes back then. I'm suggesting that maybe they didn't need them, but they had the knowledge however they got it. I don't know how they got it.
That's incredible.
Does that make sense?
We're always open to other perspectives.
And,
and,
I don't know the
great.
answer.
That's deep.
I wonder, right?
No,
This is just curiosity.
I taught a workshop, a 4-hour workshop on remote viewing.
Oh, cool.
And I went to classes with Major Ed Dames.
Cool.
Then the Sarah Goats, obviously, Project Stargate. That was years ago when he was teaching in Orlando, Florida. I did it 2 years in a row, 16 hours each time, and did pretty decent with it. Not the greatest, but decent.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting perspective because I never considered that perspective in my own hypothesis or my theory. But now that you brought that up, I'm going to add that as an adjunct to maybe it could have been this.
It's a possible explanation, but all of them involve advanced consciousness and or advanced technology.
Yeah.
And it clearly was a mix because we have was it Apothecura? What's the thing called? The ancient little computer with all the gears they found in the
Antikythera machine.
Thank you, Antikythera. I can never remember its name.
Crease, yeah.
And there's enough of these little corner cases, and there's all the giants that were in the U.S. that very clearly existed. And so just, I don't know, maybe you guys know this stuff. We're getting off the biohacking path and the trauma path here, but you're into this stuff. And when I talk about giants, a lot of people are saying, Dave, what are you talking about? Abraham Lincoln talked about this.
Yeah.
All the native tribes in the U.S. talk about how they killed off the giants because they were violent and, there were piles of bones in the U.S. What group or force is hiding this? Because at this point, bones get destroyed and there's hundreds of stories, hundreds of articles about this stuff. Like, who's behind all that?
Well, you can find actual articles online by the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
They've thrown giant bones into the Atlantic Ocean. They've discarded the bones. They've also hidden and obfuscated some of the bones.
Yes.
Openly admitted information now. So it's not a theory or conspiracy theory. It's real. This has really happened. These giant domes or these mounds, these burial mounds, the majority of them had giants buried there in the Americas. And we know they existed. And the reason why natives would come up to you, indigenous peoples of America would come up and say, how? And they would raise their hand to see if you had 6 fingers.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, because if you had 6 fingers, you were probably a descendant of or directly related to one of these giants.
So they had 6 fingers. I did not know that part.
Yeah, that's why they would do this. It was about seeing how many fingers you had. So I'm human. I'm Homo sapien. That's what they're really saying. Yeah. And they found in Chief Joseph, they found in his burial mound, in his pocket, a Sumerian tablet from Mesopotamia.
Whoa.
The Chief Joseph tablet. Look it up. How in the world did he get a Sumerian tablet from Iraq in his freaking pocket?
That was either some kind of psychic teleportation or advanced technology or balloons. I don't know, right?
And maybe he found it inside of a floating bottle at the lake. Or I don't know. So somehow he got access to this. And they also found these Proto-Sumerian carvings on pottery and tablets located where? In close to Mexico. And this was an incredible find because not only was it Proto-Sumerian, it also had a full metric system.
Wow.
And that's incredible because people didn't think the metric system was invented until just, a few hundred years ago? Because when I tell people that the Grand Gallery leading up to the King's Chamber inside the Great Pyramid is the same latitude of the speed of light in digits, in numbers. Yeah. It matches in meters per second. People go, meters didn't exist back then.
Yeah, they did because meters are based on the diameter of the Earth.
Thank you. Exactly, they did. So it's ancient stuff. It's all ancient. We only rediscover, I think, what already existed or what we already knew. Like Graham Hancock says, we're a species with amnesia. We're only just rediscovering everything from scratch. And this is another iteration of mankind rediscovering who we truly are and what we're capable of doing.
So why then are these stories not well known? Like, why does this Smithsonian throw away the bones?
Yeah.
Why is the narrative so dumb?
There's an agenda to keep control over the population, in my opinion.
Who runs the agenda?
Well, behind the scenes, there's people even above, I believe, even president.
Like above Fauci?
Yeah, definitely above Fauci. Fauci's about 10,000 rings down on that.
Oh, yeah.
On that. They're just sitting here pulling his strings like he's a puppet. But
Are we talking like old money families, Rothschild?
Old money families,
Bilderbergs?
people high up that run things, that fund wars from both sides.
Yep.
You know, I mean, it's you know, when the war was going on, World War II, and I think it was, who was it that was funding that war from America? It was George Bush Sr.'s father, right? I forget his name now, Grandpa Bush.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And so, but there's people, high-level people that are up there that are funding and creating these situations and funding both sides of wars and profiteering off of both sides.
For hundreds of years.
For hundreds of years, pulling the strings in every single angle, operating in projects that are black budget and they go with no congressional oversight. Presidents aren't even read into these projects, and they're operating. We've met people in person at the Washington, D.C. Press Club that have come forward, people that were high up in private corporations with aerospace as well as actual military, Air Force, and the stories that they tell you. And when they break down, these guys got nothing but heartache and almost killed.
Oh, you can tell it's real. Yeah.
One guy got his neck broken. One guy got his father got killed. And so there's these projects going on behind the scenes that not even the president knows about. And so their thing is control. How do we dominate and control the population? We control them by suppressing knowledge. If people can discover that, yes, there were these giants. Yes, these giants were related to these other giants on the other part of the world. And some of these giants were highly intelligent people that had helped build a very high level of civilization on this planet, far higher than what we even can achieve right now today. It would break down so many things. It would break down, first of all, a lot of religious systems would collapse or begin to break down because the narrative would have to shift. A lot of historical books, a lot of people that believe in the old way and the way that they set up the grants for the universities and the colleges, all that would have to shift and change. A way that people make money would shift and change. We're talking about multi-trillion-dollar industries coming down to a collapse.
It would be a big change.
Yeah.
And for anyone, if you're listening to this and you're saying that this stuff sounds, conspiracy theory stuff, being curious is not a conspiracy. And you say the story we have doesn't make sense and there must be an alternative one. And that's rational. And then saying, I know exactly what the alternative story is, that can get a little bit religious sometimes.
Yeah.
But I have one direct data point that is maybe the most mind-blowing of all the 1,200-something episodes. Daniel P. Brown from Harvard, not the guy who wrote Angels and Demons, but this is a Harvard professor in his 80s. 40 years of studying hypnosis. In his spare time, he translates 13th century Sanskrit cave meditation instructions into English.
Wow.
And I had him on the show to talk about attachment theory and relationships. We got into hypnosis. And I said, is there such a thing as the Manchurian Candidate? And you guys can look this up.
Oh, yeah,
so
it's real.
online.
I believe it's real. But
well,
let's see what he says.
Even if I didn't believe it, he goes, oh, of course the Manchurian Candidate's real. I said, what do you mean? He said, I spent more than 100 hours with Sirhan Sirhan.
Wow. He did?
And I'm the world's top expert in hypnosis. And I can tell you with 100% certainty, as the world's top expert, that he was hypnotized to kill people. And he said, how did you know? And I'm like, how's this happening on my little podcast? It's not that little, but it's not, it's not CNN, right?
Yeah.
Not that people listen to CNN anymore.
No more.
So he goes, well, I tapped the guy on the shoulder or on the elbow twice, which is a standard induction technique. He drops into a crouch and starts talking about blood loss rates per site of injury. And he looked at me and he said, we know who hypnotized him. We know where it happened. We know when it happened. And we know what they had him do. And I said, wow, Daniel, they should do like a documentary on this. Like, this is mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, okay. He's in his 80s. He's got a neurodegenerative disease. He's not afraid of anything. He goes, oh, they did. They did a documentary in the 80s. I said, what happened to it? Oh, they erased my 8 minutes in the documentary. They audited my taxes for 7 years.
Oh, man. Damn.
Direct from the horse's mouth on this show.
Wow.
So if you're listening to this going, hey, I don't believe any of this stuff, there's stuff that most people aren't aware of. And I'm not saying I'm aware of all of it. All I know is there's a whole lot of bullshit going on.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, the pharmaceutical industry, the health industry, I take a lot of that stuff personally.
Yeah.
Anyone who's going to stop me from any means necessary to increase my consciousness or my longevity or how I feel, you're an enemy of humanity.
Yeah.
And you're not going to stop it because I'm a hacker and I'll get around whatever you do. And there's millions of biohackers now, and there's millions more people who are on a meditation path or an awareness path, and you guys are helping millions of people too. So just for all the people who might be a little bit skeptical, I don't know how you can make that stuff up.
Yeah.
And this, a couple of these things I just shared, these are direct from the people who did it, and they're not lying, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What's the most mind-blowing thing? And I guess I'll ask you first, Billy and Elizabeth, most mind-blowing thing you've come across in all of the spiritual and ancient technology, all the stuff you've ever seen. The number one holy crap moment.
Whew. I still have to go with understanding the power of the Great Pyramid. When analyzing it and analyzing the Giza Plateau, not just the pyramid by itself, but the Giza Plateau itself, I was able to find an incredible pattern that became well known now. And this pattern connects the Great Pyramid, the additional 2 pyramids, and a couple of the temples, which are kind of worn down there, together by lines. And when you connect these lines, when you connect them by these lines at the outer edges and then inner edges, it creates this grid pattern. Now, this grid pattern, you can then put the sun in the middle as the top of one of the pyramids. You can then take Mercury, which would be another pyramid. You can take Venus, which would be one of the temples. You could take Earth, and you can even take Mars. So this grid at the points where these buildings intersect on the lines, it creates this pattern grid, which then you can say, okay, this is the inner solar system of solid planets, with the exception of the sun in the middle. Now, that sounds okay. All right. But then you take you go and download NASA's inner solar system planetary grid map, and you scale it, and you drop it on top. It matches down to the AU, the astronomical unit in astrophysics.
Wow.
So the Giza Plateau is a map of the inner planetary solar system.
Wow.
Which is mind-blowing.
What kind of training or education? How do you know all this stuff? I have a few friends and a few people I know. Graham Hancock's been on. You've been on, and several others. And how do you look at the Giza Plateau and go, "Oh, look, like that"? like what's going on in there?
I just get these insights. Elizabeth,
you're downloading this stuff.
Yeah, I download. I get real good insights, and it comes to me first. She's seen it happen so many times now.
Yeah,
it comes to me first, and I go to I got to verify this, and then I start digging into what I just realized, and then I begin to make these connections, and I go, "Oh my goodness, this is crazy," and it becomes either a theory or it becomes real. And that was one of those situations where it just came to me, and I said, wow. And I go and I get the Google Earth, and I lay it out, and I start mapping, and I'm connecting the lines, and I said, this is a grid pattern. And I said, wow, this is crazy. Let me get this and see if this matches anything I can see because when you're looking at something from the sky and looking down, they try to mirror the sky. They try to mirror the heavens all the time. So it takes me right to planets and stars. I said, let me start as close as I can. First, let's start with the sun. I don't know. When I started with the sun, that came up, and then the alignment was spot on.
Wow. This takes us full circle in our conversation. I guess we talked about intuition before and talked about emotion. And the way I define intuition when I teach people how to tap into it is, intuition is the first brief and relatively small inner knowing that happens. And you can spot it because it's the first thing. And if you have any meaningful unhealed trauma, right after that first little blip, a massive wave of emotional response will happen, which will overwhelm it or cancel it out, or you'll just get your attention. And then after the emotion comes the thought that makes up a story that you're going to believe that makes the emotion valid, and you just ignore the intuition. And in some of my books, like in The Bulletproof Diet, I wrote about how C8 MCT oil, which is now probably $1 billion industry, this one works better than all the other MCTs, right? And I know because my intuition told me, and because I tried it, and I'm like, wow, this really, and there's a mechanistic reason, but the intuition came first, and then I validated it, exactly the same process you do.
Wow.
And 5 years after I published the book, UC San Diego publishes a study that goes, oh, look, this is the one that's more ketogenic than anything else, right? So there's a inner knowing, there's a felt sense, and these are all forms of evidence,
Yeah.
right? Which are no more or less valid than double-blind, placebo-controlled.
Right.
You just use that as the last step of evidence when you're not really sure about the first 6 types.
Facts.
So it's pretty cool that you're saying, oh, I had a flash of insight. And my other data point for that is my grandfather was a co-inventor of the process we use to purify plutonium to this day called the Purex process.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, he told me when I was a kid, oh yeah, came to me in a dream. And then I went into the lab and I built all the gear and like we made this thing happen.
Wow.
Right. And same thing, the structure of DNA, Watson Crick, came in a dream. And then, Apple came on LSD, all these altered states, but breath work, stuff you guys teach, that can get you there. Psychedelics can get you there. Deep meditation can get you there. Even EMDR can get you there.
Yeah.
Tantric sex can get you there. Like there's all these different practices that are so powerful that allow you to turn down that emotional wave so you can just tune into the intuition wave. All right. We're going to go deeper on intuition. Elisabeth. What is your practice for paying attention to intuition? Like you want to intuit something, step 1, step 2, step 3. Like give me instructions.
I just go deep into my body. I go
Which
deep,
part of your body?
all of it. I kind of do a body scan.
So you body scan on it.
Yes, I'll do a body scan and then I'll kind of stop at areas that I feel something different. And I'll kind of ask myself what is going on here. And sometimes I'll get hits of information. And sometimes it's just maybe some breath that I need to release or some energy that I feel like I need to blow out or something. But really, it's just a deep body scan.
Okay, cool. And then during the body scan, you'll feel something like you feel it in your hip or something. It's a common spot. What's the next step to know it's intuition or that it's a fact or that it's something you need to pay attention to?
Well, I ask it. So I'll pay attention to that area and I'll ask it, hey, is there something that I need to know about this? Is there
Is this like an out loud voice or an inner voice?
Inner voice.
Okay.
Inner voice. And, it'll just, that immediate information will just kind of pop up. And I don't try to think about it. I just let it be.
Trying to think stops you.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. It took me 2 weeks with electrodes on my head to learn how to not try in order to get a result. God, it's so hard.
It is hard.
Okay. And then so you ask that sensation, like what in here do I need to know? How does it answer?
Sometimes it'll just, I'll get kind of like a feeling. It's almost like a knowing. Like I said, I don't think. So sometimes it's just, you've been holding here or something. Like it's telling me something that I need to work through. And it's just kind of like an automatic realization that, okay, well, maybe I've been sticking some stuff here that I need to look at. So it's just, it's almost like a knowing. It's not really any spoken words that just pop into my head, but it's the body just knowing, and I trust it. And it's really trusting your body, which is really, really important when it comes to this.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
What I've learned over the years is how to tap into the inner knowing. And what I think for me was a really big teacher was being a teacher. So I had a job in Silicon Valley. It's the company that held Google's first servers. When it was 2 guys and 2 computers, we took their computers and we built out the data centers.
Wow.
I was a co-founder of a part of that company. And 4 nights a week, I'd work 9-10 hours. And then I would have 1 hour to eat dinner and study the trade journals and then teach a 3-hour class to PhD engineers working at other companies to build the internet. So I was in charge of the web and internet engineering program at University of California while I was working. So I was like, I got to be able to teach for 3 hours. I can only read for 1 hour. I got to draw these diagrams. I got to just like rapidly download. And after a couple of years of that, it's something shifted. And it was like, oh, I can just absorb this information. I'm kind of reading it, but I'm just kind of knowing it. And then I could draw the diagrams easier, and it just became a visual thing. And now when I'm on stage, people have seen this a lot. Like, Dave, you have this great memory. I have the world's shittiest memory. What I do is I stop thinking, and then I just know.
Yes.
Right? And what I just know is based on science and facts and all that stuff, but it's not an act of thinking. It's an act of allowing the truth to emerge that I already know in my bones is in there.
Yes.
Does that resonate with what you're doing?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yep, flow state.
Yeah.
Billy, what do you do different?
Well, what I do is my intuition is more targeted towards these epiphanies that I get that make connections, great connections for me within science, metaphysics, spirituality, or ancient civilizations. or even just artistic things like music. Right? As soon as something hits me, the second it hits me, like you should be a producer. I don't even question it.
Mm-hmm.
I literally don't question it. Now, I had never was a producer, didn't produce anything until probably 2000, I think it was 16. But when it came to me, you should try producing music, because I'm always complaining about the music on the radio. I'm always complaining, oh, this is horrible, this is garbage, this is trash. And then one day, I just heard myself say, you should become a producer. Wow. And when I heard that, I instantly went straight to Amazon.com and I bought a beat machine and I bought some technology. And I started working on producing beats. And I developed a passion for it and became so good that in 2018, I made Billboard for 8 weeks in 4 categories on an album that I produced called Return of Enki, one of the ancient Sumerian gods.
Wow.
Yeah. So along with Donnie Arcade, Cruz, Jackson Turner, shout out to those guys. They really did a phenomenal job. Londrell and Richard Wagner for helping out and contributing to the album. But yeah, so when I get that feeling, like to check out this potential grid pattern at the Giza, it's like I drop everything. I drop everything because I know if you wait, forget about it. It's gone. I've done that before. I've lost probably 10,000 incredible epiphanies over the decades just because, I can't do it right now, or I'll get back to it later. You never get back to it later. When the big ones hit me, though, I just feeling and just charge that I get, and I get to it that moment, that second, and I began to research and dig it. I was walking down the beach one day, doing my meditation walk, activating the left hemisphere, right hemisphere, just walking. I do my greatest meditations walking the beach. My whole album was produced walking the beach in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And this one time I'm walking, and it tells me parabolic down conversion. And I'm like, parabolic down conversion? It's going to be a big part. It's going to be a big part of everything you do, parabolic down conversion. I'm like, that's a weird phrase that just popped into my head. I start looking it up right away. It's a process on how you can get 2 particles on the same frequency so that you can quantum entangle them.
Oh, wow.
Okay? I'm walking in on the which became a big part of some of my biggest lectures that I've ever done, quantum entanglement, and my manifestation classes. And then also walking down the beach again, quantum walkers comes in, quantum walkers. I look up quantum walkers. It's a real thing in quantum mechanics, and it's how things can jump from one state to another state and break, kind of through the quantum field. And this becomes a part of a movie that I'm working on. I mean, all these things they just come. And when you come, you have to jump on them instantaneously. So my intuition is geared towards those things. It's not that great towards picking people as friends, except it is phenomenal in picking my wife. I picked a great one. I finally figured this one out. But I've never been this happy in my entire life, like literally. Like this is the happiest I've ever been. I've done great things. I've been all over the world. I've lived the life of 10 men, but pure, unadulterated happiness that I found within myself and in a partner, this is the best time for me to be alive.
Wow. What a beautiful statement of love. I love that. This intuition thing it's so interesting. You talk about being a producer. One of the more profound interviews I had was with Rick Rubin, and we got to be friends. And I got to go to Shangri-La and record a podcast with him. Next to Bob Dylan's touring bus.
Crazy.
It's like a spiritual experience. And Rick is one of the more zen, peaceful, just powerful presences ever. And we were driving to lunch or something, and we're talking about music, and I'm just like, how do you do this? And I just have to shout out for The Creative Act, his book, incredible. And I mentioned some type of like North African fusion with EDM, and I've never seen anything like this. It felt like an array of antennas, just like every fiber in his being just like turned and like locked in and like scanned. It was like, that's not it. And just returned back to his chill. And I was like, wow, like what a like focused intention. But he didn't have to think. He just knew, nope, that's not one. Boom. And it was so fast, but it was so powerful. Yeah. Right. And that's another one of those intuitive things. And I'm sure if that had been like the right thing, he would have been like, tell me more. Yeah. Right. And it was maybe the sensation of like watching like a lion just laying there, and then something moves and it's like, and then, nah, that wasn't it.
Yeah.
It was so powerful. And I have so much respect there.
Yeah.
So we've talked about intuition. We've talked about relationships. What do you think about love at first sight?
It can be illusory. It can be real, I'll just talk from my personal experience. You can talk from yours. I thought I had love at first sight a couple of times in my life. And it turned out not to be love at first sight. It turned out to be lust at first sight.
Yeah.
But I do believe that some people do have that experience. I actually know one person that did have love at first sight and is still married till this current day. And I think it's been 20-something years. So it can happen. Lightning can strike like that. For me, it didn't happen exactly that way. But what I do like is the experiences that I've had over the decades and being in relationships and raising a family and going through the ups and downs of, getting divorced and all this stuff. It taught me a lot about who I was when I finally came to the realization that a lot of the problems I'm having in a relationship, it's really based on me. You can keep pointing the finger and blaming the other person, but at some point you got to look in the mirror and you got to look at yourself. And I began to realize that I'm a super giver. I'm a big giver. And that leaves me vulnerable.
It does.
And it allows me, in the state that I was in, to want to be vulnerable in some weird way, to punish myself, linked to childhood trauma.
Yes.
And when I came to the realization that when a giver gets with a taker, they get into a relationship. And that relationship is very toxic. So I did, from all those experiences, the best thing I ever did was I said to myself out loud, I don't want any more takers. I want to find a giver. I didn't meet Elisabeth until probably 7 months later, but I met Elisabeth and she turned out to be a giver. And so we're both givers, and it's been such a relief. Because I could say a relief, absolute relief to be in a relationship like that. So I didn't have the fortune of being in a love at first sight relationship my entire life, but I'll take it the way it happened because it panned out that I'm in a relationship that I absolutely love.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks. I love you.
All right. We know who's going on a good date tonight. Elisabeth, love at first sight?
Well, I believe definitely it could happen.
I have to pause. You're glowing right now. You chose the right
you
words, my friend.
Keep going.
I'm seriously, your whole visage changed. Anyway, keep going.
Oh no. Yeah. I mean, I believe that it can definitely happen. I definitely think it's out there. For me personally, it has not. But I think that with us, it's the beauty of getting to know each other, and the beauty of finding out that, this person has all of these issues, and it's great because you get to tackle them together. And it's just the beauty of the struggle, the beginning struggle. I think that has really built a strong foundation for us to be able to tackle these struggles and get over these obstacles.
Yeah, it's like we fight for one another.
Yeah.
There's something to be said for taking some time to get to know someone. And I'm dating one of the top relationship experts out there, Christina Weber, who runs a group called We Deepen and brings in like all the other top relationship coaches to do masterminds for people. And I help her on those. And it's been really interesting to just learn from all of the relationship people over the last year or two. And what I've come across is you'll always be attracted to someone with the same level of trauma as you, of unhealed trauma, not necessarily the same type of trauma.
Yeah.
So the more work you do on yourself, the more healing you do on yourself, the more you're likely to attract someone who's more healed. And if you're in a good relationship, you'll help each other heal by pushing each other's buttons. Right. But that initial attraction that a lot of people think is love at first sight, it can just be a trauma bond, i.e. lust at first sight.
Yeah.
And it can also be, this is more esoteric, it can also be past life stuff. Like there's just a connection. And a lot of people are saying, well, there's no way to prove past lives. It turns out there is. There's lots of books written about it. There's plenty of evidence for this. And my take on this is it's just rational to believe in reincarnation. The reason is if I'm wrong, I'm not going to know it. And if I'm, and whether I'm right or wrong, I will live my life with less fear. Because I'll start the game over again if I really screw it up.
That's right.
Right. And so just living without fear allows more intuition, allows more love, allows more peace. So it's just rational to believe that whether or not you think there's evidence for it. And I've had plenty of direct evidence. And so I've met some people who are like, wow, there's like a knowingness. Like this is a long lost, like deep connection. And some of my closest friends, I'm like, oh yeah, like this is our first time around. And other friends, other people I've been in relationships with, it's like, you know what? We genuinely developed a new appreciation and developed a connection.
Yeah.
And I don't think either one's superior to the other. There's oftentimes spiritual growth, but also more risk in going with a past life or a trauma pod,
Yeah.
which is why my advice for younger people is if it's, head over heels, love at first sight, it may be a gift, but go slow.
Yeah.
Just go slow and give it time to see what's really underneath it. Is it a trauma thing? And even if it's past life, doesn't mean you didn't kill each other in a past life. And it's cool that you guys met and developed trust over time, which is really I think really a special thing.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. I know we're coming up on the end of the time we've got. ElisabethCarson.com is where you can find your work on trauma and biohacking and things like that.
Yes.
And Billy, what's the best URL?
Forbiddenknowledge.com with the number 4. Forbiddenknowledge.com.
Forbiddenknowledge.com.
Yeah.
Number 4. Good deal. And it's a fun interview because we could talk about relationships. And since I'm doing some work in that industry with Christina at We Deepen, I feel like I under-indexed on studying relationships early in my life. Like if I could go back to when I was 19 or 20, I was insanely curious, but I was all about tech and business. And like, these are so interesting and all that. If I could tell myself, like, study relationships with 20% of your energy, so at least I would have had basic relationship skills to pick a better partner and to know how to not like screw it up.
Right.
I'm pretty good at that. Screwing it up, I mean. And so now I may be filling in those parts of my knowledge that I didn't have, which has been just validating. And man, I wish I would have known as much about that as I learned about marketing or horizontal architecture or something.
Yeah. That's amazing, though.
Yeah.
Hats off to you, man. It's amazing because you can get to a point in life where you just stop taking challenges.
Yeah.
It can happen, but once you stop being curious, that's when you get old.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So our last question, and I'll ask each of you. Elisabeth, you go back to your 20-year-old self. Number one piece of advice.
Oh, man. I would say that it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right, that you will get over this phase, and you will find happiness, true happiness, and to have hope for that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Billy.
More self-love, more self-care. I wasn't loving myself in that range. I was more giving it all away to people that really didn't appreciate it. And I was getting sucked dry, Oh
man, it's happened to me too.
Yeah. And just more self-love, more self-care. And it's so important. Just like when you get on an airplane and they say when they push back, if we lose cabin pressure and the oxygen mask drops, put it on yourself first before helping anyone else.
It's such good advice, and it's hard to do when you're a giver. And one of the mistakes that I made in my view of reality is probably because I had Asperger's syndrome or something, but I had this naive view that if I do something good for you, you'll do something good for me. And then the takers in the world, narcissists, sociopaths, they're like, this is great.
Yeah.
So they'll do something good for you that isn't that good. And then when they do something that's bad for me, I'd be like, oh, that was a mistake. Let me do something else good for you to show you that I'm a good person. And then, like, don't you know the game we're playing? And they're laughing, going, no, the game we're playing is I'm going to take all your shit.
Yes.
Right. And I finally learned that. And I have lots of attorneys who work for me. And I'm like, try it.
Nice. Yeah.
Right. And, if you're a snake or you're a taker, even if you think you're not a taker, and a lot of the worst takers don't know they're takers.
Yeah.
There's a chapter in Heavily Meditated, my new book, about the 4 kinds of people. And, how do you spot them? Because that's a skill, aside from relationships. Maybe I would have learned that in relationships, but that's a skill, discernment. And if you're not good at it, outsource.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'll be tapping in now. Trust me.
There you go.
Yes.
Oh, man. Running by Elisabeth right away.
Well, guys, thank you for this wide-ranging and fun conversation on trauma, biohacking, emerald tablets, biohacking emerald tablets, using hypnosis, all the stuff. It's been huge fun, and thanks for making the trip to Austin.
Thank you.
Thanks
Appreciate
for having
it. Much
us.
appreciated. Yeah.
If you guys like today's episode, I want you to find a hollow giant bone and smoke some psychedelics. Okay, no. What I'd love for you to do is leave a review Go to forbiddenknowledge.com, go to elizabethcarson.com, and just be curious. I promise you that all three of us are probably wrong about at least one thing.
Yeah.
We're just probably more right than the average person. My job is to curate people and to share knowledge, to help you live longer, help you be happier. And I think this episode did that.
See you next time on the Human Upgrade Podcast.